Welcome to Your Story Medicine. I am your host, Jimanekia, and today I am with a sister friend, Jimanekia. Jimanekia Eborn is a queer media consultant, comprehensive sex educator, and sexual assault and trauma expert. She's the host of Trauma Queen, a podcast miniseries for survivors of assault and our allies. This podcast focuses on uplifting voices in all communities and exploring our collective journey to healing, and is also she also has a spin-off where she does Q&As. Her Instagram is poppin', but there's a backstory between Jimanekia and I. She's not somebody who is Insta famous, and I'm like, I want to be friends with you. Let's hop on an interview. So Jimanekia and I actually both met, I would say about 4 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh my God, has it been that long?
It's been that long. And both of us came, I feel like we both came like wounded animals into this circle of women entrepreneurs. And we both had just transitioned out of the sexual assault, domestic violence field. I was fired. I don't know about you. And I was all like,
I left that job and then made my own.
Yeah, essentially. And I was all like, you know what? Screw the nonprofit industrial complex. There's got to be another way. I ain't ever going to let anybody fire me again. And, during that time, I was like, oh my God, but I didn't know I need healing. And so 4 years later, here we are, both of us who are carving out our own paths and redefining what healing can look like beyond the lens of solely trauma, which I feel tends to be the narrative that we're perpetuating over and over again, especially with survivors. And like, what does it look like on the other side of our trauma? And on top of that, with everything that's happening right now, because at the time of this recording, we are in the midst of a pandemic. How is it that we are self-caring or self-soothing ourselves? And what does it look like to just say, fuck it all?
I love it. I love it. It's definitely the season of fuck it's.
And apparently it's Mercury retrograde. So when in doubt, just blame the cosmos. Okay, so Jimanekia, let us know where's that you're calling in from, and in your own words, how would you describe your medicine?
So I am on the outskirts of Los Angeles. I live in Chino. I moved out of LA because it's a lot and I like to opt in and out. That's like how I'm taking care of myself in that way. And my medicine looks like so many different things, right? It looks like storytelling. It looks like sleeping. It looks like dancing in my room to a playlist that I've made. And I think it also has to do with stillness and actually like sitting with myself, which I find like a lot of people are so busy that we don't do. And this pandemic is kind of forcing us to navigate what that looks like.
Yeah, stillness. And because you are the trauma queen, have like stillness. What is that? How dare you tell me to be still? At least from my understanding, when I think about trauma as a physiological response of fight or flight or freeze, and like, what's the nearest thing that I can beat up? Just kidding. But yeah, it really has been an invitation. Yes, just kidding and not. And also, what a beautiful opportunity to just say fuck it all and lean into that stillness and that discomfort.
Let's see if I can do that. Oh, there we go. And then I can look in one direction.
Ooh. So we're double streaming on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay.
FYI. Awesome. Okay. So Jimanekia, tell us, what is it that brought you to this work, going as far back to your ancestral lineage, and how that's influenced the way that you're showing up today?
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to say a few hard things. Ready? Okay. I like to preface that so people like can be prepared and be like, is she going to say something scary? I don't have time. So I always say that I am a child of trauma. My mother was killed when I was 1. They actually found me with her body. By my grandparents, super fucking amazing. And with the support of my aunts, I went into the domestic violence field, work and support those individuals and just kind of have it make sense to me, like what happened, like the understanding aspect. So I went to school for criminal justice. While I was at school, I actually was raped my 3rd year, which caused me to spiral out and become a fun party girl. But really, I was just trying to navigate my trauma because, that's what we do sometimes. And lots of alcohol, lots of fornicating, which I don't take back the fornicating. I knew what I was doing. That was fun. But like, these are all things that led me to do this. And it definitely switched my work once I was raped. And then I got kicked out of school. Best thing that ever happened to me. I'm so thankful finally, because I was trying to get out for so long. And my counselor was like, no, let's get you this and this. And I was like, no, I want to leave. So I got kicked out. I became a rape crisis counselor. And I opened a vintage clothing store because I'm a Gemini and I have to have balance and just do all kinds of random things.
Are we twinsies
and then I went back to school
what?
for psychology. Yes.
Yes. I'm a Gemini too.
That's how I was like, I heard it. I was like, I get it. And then I went back to school and I just started working in different mental health facilities. I started with juvenile sex offenders, and then I went with teenagers, then, adult women, eating disorders. Like, I kind of went over the gamut, and what kept coming up for me is most of these folks were sexual assault survivors, all ages, all genders. It was just like, wow. And then one day I was just tired and burned out. And I was like, I need to find something that's ever growing and evolving and never boring. And I was like, sex. And my grandmother, who I call my mom, she was like, oh, hell, what are you doing now? And I was like, it's fine. I don't know yet, but it'll be fun. And she was just like, okay. I think at this point, they're just like, what is she doing now? Okay, well, are you safe? Do you need any money? Are you alive? You have food? I'm like, They're like, good luck. And I went and kind of just figured it out. I went to like multiple conferences and I went to tons of speaking things and I read things. And what I saw was there wasn't a lot of people that were talking about trauma. They were like pleasure and condoms and lubes and all the things. And I'm like, yes. But like, there's so many folks that can't even get to lube. They're like, no, they can't get to toys. And I was like, but that's like what I love. So I was like, ooh, let's just combine them. And somehow we've gotten here. Trauma Queen came out of me getting tired of like teaching, because I find that a lot of people talk at people and don't talk to them. And I've seen that so much. I was like, I don't like to do that. And so I've changed the way I even speak to people. So I get back to teaching. So I do teach again. But that's how the podcast came about. Storytelling. I think there's so much healing in storytelling and like seeing how people go through things, see how people come out of it, and it helps other people. We're talking about lineage. Like, for me, there's so many strong Black women in my life that have all overcome so much domestic violence, sexual assault, raising children on their own, and just navigating what racism looks like, what sexism looks like, what being a Black woman in America looks like, because that's a whole different category. And seeing their strength and like how they navigated it has been like helping me. Also, I'm like, some of those things I don't need to do, because some of that's, continued trauma, and we can break that up, because generational trauma is real. And I'm like, you didn't realize what you were doing because that's what you knew, and you passed it down. And I was like, I'm here to break it all up. So that's what it looks like for me, is just reflecting and being appreciative that those individuals went through that journey before I had to. So I can also be like, thank you so much, but also, ooh, no, I don't want that.
So when I first entered the online sphere, my very first interview series was Your Story Medicine, How to Move from Trauma to Resilience. And we know that, of course, it's not a linear path, but one of the challenges that I've personally come across is the more that I talk about trauma, there's this concern that I may be perpetuating it, which is why I feel like you and I, who both have a background in being rape crisis hotline counselors or holding space for other survivors, are stepping into the role as coaches. Like, how is it that we can support people in moving beyond the trauma narratives to see what's possible without also ignoring having the difficult conversations of what that experience was like? So what would you say to anybody who might feel like, well, I don't want to be in my trauma anymore, like, or
Mhm.
what is an alternative?
Well, I always tell people that growth comes in uncomfortable spaces. In the sense of if we're just comfortable in whatever we're doing, we aren't evolving to a different level of ourselves, right? And it's uncomfortable because it's hard, it's stressful, it's new. But I don't think there's any healing in just acting like it didn't exist, right? Like it's still there, it's still within us. I actually just finished, Mama finished a master's degree a few weeks ago. I know, I'm tired.
Wait, did you just
In
say
health psychology.
you just finished a master's degree?
I did. Yes, and
Okay.
the debt is real. Like, but I went back to school because I wanted to continue learning how to support individuals. So my degree is in health psychology because there's so much that goes on. Like we can ignore our traumas and be like, it didn't happen, which I did for many years. But I also started to have a lot of chronic pain. I started to have a lot of illness because we hold trauma in our bodies. So we can ignore it all day and be like, well, you know what? I just don't feel like dealing with it. But it's going to come up. Okay, I'm going to say something. It may be off for people, but like it's like an edible, right? You have an edible and then you take it, you forget about it, and then it comes back and it's like, boop, boop, remember me? I'm here. And that's kind of how trauma is because it's unprocessed. It's still within our bodies. If we don't address it, we hold on to it and it shows up in different ways. So I like to tell people to ease into it as they need to. But it is something that is going to affect you your whole life. And if you figure out how to handle it for yourself and navigate it for yourself and get the tools that you specifically need, you can do better for yourself. Because really, it's all about you. It's not about the people. Like, yes, and like, yeah, we want to be good for ourselves and like our partners and our families and whoever follows us and who we are teaching and supporting. But also, it's about you. And so, yeah, we are having conversations and they are hard, right? But growth comes from it. And we get to have the tools that our ancestors probably didn't have. And that's why we get to break up that generational trauma by being like, this is awful. This is fuck shit. I'm going to fix this so the people that see me can see that there's a way. And like also being honest, like this is hard. Like last year, I spiraled out. My rapist contacted me. That was hard. And like, I know all the things, but even knowing all the things, when it came up, I was like, okay, I need to do this. I need to do this. I was still screwed for like a weekend, but I had the tools to like be able to navigate that and like keep myself safe while my body was processing that part of the trauma. I hope that answered your question. I said a lot of words.
No, I feel you on all of that, and I think yeah, and I've shared this experience with you, but 2 weeks after I was let go from my rape crisis hotline job, that I got incredibly sick and I couldn't even walk. I couldn't get out of bed. And it was just a weird time because I also didn't have health insurance, but I still went to the
Mm.
ER because I was in so much pain in my yoni area. And they just told me that whatever I was experiencing would go away naturally, which it did. But then, it led me on an adventure back
Mm.
to my own motherland to see how it is my ancestors healed themselves, because I was all like, if these institutions can't help me, if
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes they're the ones that are unknowingly perpetuating that harm, then
We can talk about that. Yes, we can.
let's save that for
I'm
another
like, yes,
conversation. But
yes.
when I hear you say we have a lot of the tools that our ancestors didn't have, I actually feel like because we are carving out our own path, it's actually awakening the tools that have always been within us, that now
Mm-hmm.
we get to reclaim, because so
Mm-hmm.
much of healing, at least in Western context, looks like just being able to talk it out, which is important, but then we're forgetting movement,
Mhm.
and we're forgetting touch,
Mhm.
and how that is such an important part of feeling
Mhm.
safe and at home in these bodies.
Mhm.
So I want to know, what is it with all that's unfolding? What are some of the things that you are doing to stay grounded? And
Mhm.
also, there's some of us who are just like, I'm not grounded, and that's okay. Acknowledging that that's real
Oh,
too.
I just got grounded this week. So if we're being honest, March was like, what is happening? I'm spinning. April has flown by so quickly that I'm like, am I grounded? Am I here? I don't know. But what I have been doing, and when you asked me like what I wanted to name this, and it was like leaning into my fuck it. I think there's two different versions of that. I think there's the part where we are just like spinning out. We're just like, fuck it. I don't know what to do. I don't know. I don't know. Right. And I think that's also a valid space to be in your life right now. Because I mean, if you look at all these press conferences, no one really knows. So we're all in it together. But then there's the fuck it. I need to take care of myself. Right. And if that means like grabbing your water. Yes, my bottle's huge. Like I'm drinking 1 to 2 of these a day, right? Like grabbing your water and like drinking. If that means physically grounding and sitting on the ground, do that. Like I will sit on the ground, and I have puppy friends that just run around and they're like, rub my belly. That's great. If I'm like, I should lay in bed. Fun fact, I am a huge pro wrestling fan. Most people are like, you, and I'm like, don't do this. I've been a fan since I was 9. um, so I will go back and just like watch old wrestling matches. Like I'm like, oh, this is good, because it's like my own soap opera. It's I know what some of it's going to happen. It's controlled. um and like doing that, and also that means like I can't watch reality TV shows right now. Like for me, I'm like, I am already living in the wildest reality TV show I've ever seen. I don't
Not
need
even
extras.
not even Love is Blind, or that new one
Okay,
where
I
sex.
did Love Is Blind already.
Okay.
I did that one. I did. Yes. Oof, that was a time. But I also cheated and only watched a few episodes and went to the finale because I was like, y'all are dumb. I did not watch that new one because I'm like, why does everyone look the same? Everyone's so cute. Why are there no queer people? Why are there no fat people?
Yeah,
Like,
totally. For not that we're not promoting the show, but it's a new series where people who love to have sex and who are incredibly good looking by Eurocentric uh, beauty standards get stuck on an island and are told that they can't have sex in the next 30 days. The circle. I don't know. But on to this
I'm
reality.
just, but yeah, doing little things like that. Also, like, I have found it hard, and other people may as well that have listened to this. Sometimes I find it hard to feed myself and like motivate it to, I'm like, I'm not hungry. And I want to like remind people that that's normal, because we are literally living in a traumatic situation where we're like, no, it's fine. There's trauma outside, there's trauma on social media, there's trauma on the news. Like it's physically coming at us all day, every day right now. So I've been like doing like little things, like doing like a big thing and then just like snacking on it. I just ordered some smoothies so I can feed myself. But yeah, there's so many different things that I've been doing, and stretching. Oh, stretching feels so great because again, we are holding our bodies. Most of us are doing Zoom things now, so we're sitting in our chairs often. So, like remembering to drink your water and stretch your body, you may be like, I feel fine. But once you get that one stretch in, you're like, oh, I have not been good. So, those have been like super helpful. And that's just like a few things. And for some folks, if you like a good masturbation session, I support that because that also is great.
It sounds so basic, and yet it is the basic, simple things that many of us neglect because we're so in our heads over intellectualizing
Yeah.
what healing can look like. But I
Mm-hmm.
also want to know, because I'm so honestly right now I'm tired of hearing people saying go and just get self-care, care for yourself, and it's all like I feel like we only use
That's
the term
hard.
self-care when it's just feels so out of reach. And I know that you talk about the difference between self-care versus self-soothing. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I will be the first to admit that sometimes I will go on a Netflix binge or whatever series is
Oh
on.
yeah.
And that's I don't I know that that's not necessarily self-care. Maybe it can be. I know that it's a form of
It's
dissociation.
self-soothing though.
I'm like, I'm dissociating. Leave me alone. Don't judge me.
Mm-hmm. But that's what self-soothing is, like doing things that still feel good to us that we're distracting. Like, is it gonna feed my body? No, but I'm fucking happy right now. And I deserve to be happy right now and enjoy this and not worry about everything else. And like I talk about, like we need both. We need to like take care of ourselves in whatever way that feels like, you know. If that means going to the gym. I just bought a row machine because I need that for my body. It'll be here today or tomorrow. But like also like distraction. Like we need to opt out for me, and this is just a me thing. Maybe you want to hear it too, but you're allowed to opt out of the things that are going on right now. Like it doesn't mean that you don't care. And I want to remind people like it doesn't mean that you're an awful person. It doesn't mean that you don't care. It means that you need a break. And that is so needed right now because it's everywhere. So watch your Netflix shows, binge on them, stay in your pajamas all day. You know, so what? Who's gonna check you, boo? Like nobody. Like we're all doing it. We're all trying to figure out where our next money is coming from, where our meals are coming from, and our shelter. Right. So like self-soothing is so needed, but also self-care is. But I think that self-care is also kind of a buzzword. And people are like, oh, you have to self-care. And you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? You know, take care of yourself. Like, no, like, because both of them are still taking care of yourself. And neither of them is better than the other. We may just need them at different times.
Yeah, I feel like self-care as well as the word trauma have become buzzwords. And so we get to disrupt what that looks like and reclaim what that means for ourselves. And this is probably why I don't like to talk about trauma as much as I did before. It still comes up because it's the world that I
That's
came from,
life.
and you know, it's something that's still incredibly important for me, but something that I realize is that the more that I talked about trauma, the more that I attracted it. And I don't know if I have been fully equipped with being able to hold so much space, especially as somebody who was on the hotline calls and held all of that space. And it's like, I run a business
Mm-hmm.
now. I don't have that capacity. I don't have the grant money that used to flow in for me to be able to exert all of this
Yeah.
energy. And so it's definitely been a process for me to support people who are ready to do the work, and also shifting that narrative, which
Mm-hmm.
has also served me in the way that I hold space today with a lot of people whose stuff is
Yeah.
coming up in this time. Like, okay, how much longer do we want to talk about this? Let's actually talk about what's possible on the other side. And some
Mm-hmm.
people just need to be in that story, and it comes to a point
It's
where
hard.
we need to have that self agency to shift that.
Yeah. And then people, once you start being like, hey, so let's talk about other things. Like let's focus our energy somewhere else than people, because you know, I get this all day. They're like, well, you don't care. And I'm like, it's not that I don't care. It's that if we stay stuck in this trauma, is this helping you? And some
Yeah.
people are comfortable in that space because that's what they know. And that's where the shift has to happen. And like I tell people, people are like, well, you should talk to this person. You should do this. My first question, it pisses people off. Why? They're like, what do you mean why? Or people are like, you should work with this person and you should create with this person. Why? Well, you do the same thing. What is that? You know. And I'm like, no, what is it?
Yeah,
So,
I love how someone said in the comments that self-care can be used as a safety blanket for procrastination, and I hear that a lot of times. And so something that I've come to understand about self-care is that it looks like sometimes doing the difficult things, like getting out of bed or brushing your teeth
yeah,
or actually making yourself a meal. And that's different from self-soothing, because sometimes self-care does not feel good.
no, it doesn't. And it's like the things that we need, right? Like, again, all the things we need don't feel good all the time, but it like helps us in the long run. But I think that's so true that the hard things, like, they stagger in where they are.
Like taking a shower, even though we have
Listen,
nowhere to go.
listen. Sometimes I'm like, oh, then I gotta take my clothes off, and then there's soap, and then you gotta put clothes back on. You gotta moisturize.
I'm right there with you. I'm like, dang, it's like a 10-step self-care routine. I'm tired. So Jimanekia, what is it that you have been learning to release?
Mm. So much. Um, I am in a home with someone that is immune compromised. And is I live with my best friend. I live with my person. Like if y'all watch Grey's Anatomy, that is my Meredith, right? Like that is my person. I'm used to like doing things for myself and doing what I want moving. I have really been looking at my selfishness and like what that means for me and what that looks like. Like, yes, I think you're allowed to be selfish and take care of yourself, but also being mindful of like the way that I move, right? And it's just slowing me down and allowing me to really look at things a little bit more, which has been really nice. And also releasing that I don't know everything and that I do know things all at the same time, which has been very interesting because I constantly struggle with like imposter syndrome. So like I'm trying to release my imposter syndrome and being like, yeah, there's some things I don't know and that's where I'm learning, but I do know a whole bunch. And it's like, oh wow. So the like those are the biggest things. And also like remembering to sit with myself again has been like I said, sitting. And sitting means laying in my bed. I bought myself a huge body pillow. And I'm like, this is great. And like just grounding and being like, I'm just gonna sit on the ground today and do some stuff. And that's okay.
I want to talk more about imposter syndrome because I feel like this comes up so much, especially for those of us who identify as women of color who are stepping into these roles as quote unquote experts, acknowledging that we also get to disrupt what it means to be an expert. It's not about your certification or your
Mm-hmm.
accolades.
Mm-hmm.
What is your lived experience and how can that serve as medicine for the people it is you want to serve? And I literally just wrote about this yesterday and I sent it out to my newsletter about my own struggle with imposter syndrome and how when I first left the field of sexual assault, that my imposter syndrome was like 1,000%. And since then, because I've invested in my own support as well, and I've
Mm-hmm.
had to stretch myself in so many ways, it's probably gone down to maybe 70%. It's still there. I don't think it's ever going to go away. So what is it you do when the imposter creeps up on you?
I first want to say, like, I don't think we need it to always go away. I think we need parts of it to kind of just like keep us on our toes and like forcing us to do better. I don't trust people that are like, I know everything. I feel great. And I'm like, so you don't, huh? So there's like no questioning. Like you just know everything. So you're not growing anymore. Like you're, because I feel like that challenges us to like reach out and do more and like learn more. I don't know. But sometimes I'll go look at my own website, honestly, and be like, I have done things, or I'll Google myself, which is very weird. And it reminds me like I sometimes get so deep in like doing things, I forget what I do. Like people are like, my mom yelled at me once, and she was like, "You were in college." Well, so like for me, dealing with my imposter syndrome is leaning into the hard parts and also checking in with my people. When I feel like I'm like, I just feel awful. I'm like, can we talk? And my friends are like, yes, we would love to remind you about all the things you've done and like what kind of person you are. So for me, I like to invite people to like check in with your support systems. Like they're your support system because you chose them for a reason, because they see the parts of you that you don't see and or the parts that you forget. And sometimes they're also the people that are like, hey, what you're doing is wild. What are you doing? So they remind you of like where you've been, and sometimes they help you to remember like where you're going. So for me, that is so important. Like people are like, you have friends from like middle school and elementary school. And I'm like, yeah, they remind me of all kinds of things. My best friend, we met the first day of seventh grade. She likes to remind me of how I fell down the stairs in the seventh grade every other day. And I'm like, let's get past this. But it helps to like remind me of like where I've been. So for me, that has been really helpful.
Yeah, so I'd love to invite, well, if you would share a ritual, a practice, or words of wisdom that people can use to help them stay grounded, what would that
Mm-hmm.
be? And it can even be a follow up on exactly what we're talking about.
Um, yeah. So what I try to do even before I get my little toesies out of bed is like check in with my body. For me, is just being remembered, like remembering, like I am safe. I am breathing. I have shelter. I have food. I am thankful. I have family that I can reach out to. I have friends. So, like, for me, that is like how I do it. Like, remembering where I am and like checking in with my physical body because sometimes we're so on the go that we don't check in with ourselves. And I think that's so important. You're muted. I'm like, I can hear you over here.
So if you can have people take an action so
Mhm.
that they can embody everything it is that we're talking about after this conversation, what would that action be?
Allow yourself at least 5 minutes day of silence. And not like, oh no, I'm silent, I got music on. No, like literal just sitting down and like being on the ground and just sitting with yourself. And then 5 minutes of stretching after that. You can do it before or after, but like sit with yourself and like we avoid our thoughts often. Like sit with them for a little bit, face them a little bit, and then stretch and release some of that trauma, some of that tension that we're holding.
What's been helping me is because the thoughts will just float around in my brain. I have my journal. I have not written in this
Mm-hmm.
thing for so long, but I feel like I have written more in the past month than I have in the past year. And so I'll
Mm-hmm.
have conversations with myself, and oftentimes I find that I need to get out all the negative thought patterns and the imposter
Mm-hmm.
that is just like a monkey mind chatter in my brain, and then I'll speak to that voice from my higher self, like, good girl, you got this. It's okay. You've been through hard
That's so
times
needed.
before. But if I
Yeah.
would add an additional action for people, which you could also consider a ritual, is knowing that you don't have to do this by yourself. And with my
Mm-hmm.
own clients, what I have found a lot of where I have found a lot of growth happen is not in the delivery of information, but in the affirmation and in the space holding and in creating spaces for us to just allow ourselves to crumble and be like, you know what, I'm not doing okay today. And it's like, okay, let's
Mm-hmm.
pause. Let's take a moment to refill each other's cups. And then also, if somebody is having a win, acknowledge it, because
Mm-hmm.
even for those of us who are seen as leaders or quote unquote experts, because now we're telling y'all that even we struggle with imposter syndrome, it means a
All
lot
day.
when you acknowledge, like, I really appreciate what it is you're doing, and thank you, because yes, we do this work for ourselves a lot of times to just like heal our own inner child with our future selves cheering us on. But we also do this with the intention that somebody out there who's listening also needs to hear this medicine, so that you know, and that we know that we're
Mm-hmm.
not alone on this journey of finding our roots all over again, especially when systemic trauma is a real thing. And the way that we're going to get through it is honestly by normalizing,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these challenges, And also the gentle reminder that
Yeah.
if like I love thinking about Octavia Butler and just this future, what this future is going to look like, and how our imagination, being able to exercise our imagination, is actually one of the most radical things that we can do right now, instead of just allowing whatever's being fed to us be the only reality we believe exists. Okay,
Mm.
getting off my soapbox.
You deserve to be on the soapbox.
Oh,
Take up
thank you.
space.
I will unapologetically take up space. So, Jimanikia, if you could leave people with any other final words, or what is it that you're cooking up right now, and where is it that people can go to find you? Where would that be?
I'm I'm figuring out what I'm cooking up, to be honest.
Cool. Aren't we
Because we're
all?
all about honesty here. Um I every Monday we do I have a business with a friend of mine. It's called Healing.Intersections. Every Monday we do support groups. There are two support groups, 2 p.m. PST. There is a sex worker support group that Angie does with a sex worker, and then 4 p.m. PST we do a group for survivors. And it literally, sometimes we talk about trauma and sometimes we just talk about making it. It's 90 minutes. We have a sliding scale, $10 to $20, Healing Intersections on Instagram, Facebook, all the places. And it's just been like a beautiful space. And like navigating what my work looks like, I'm doing more conversations and like creations of work versus I'm not big on doing one-on-one work. I've tried to do it and I was like, this isn't my calling. That's why I didn't want to be a therapist. So like creating and supporting as I do has been really great. And just like showing up and being honest, I think has been helpful for people. But yeah, you can find me in all the places on as Jimanekia, because that's what my manager told me to do, because it's easier to find me. And TraumaQueen.Love, and yes, .love is real. That's where everything is, and that's where the podcast is. You can look up the podcast Trauma Queen, and then the one where you can send in questions, and if you want support, Gyms with Jim is the podcast, and then you can send questions to Gems, GEMSWITHJIM at hotmail at gmail. Ooh, I'm old. At gmail.com. And like I'll answer the questions for you. Because sometimes you can't just send me things in my DM because that's not helpful. You're just sending me trauma and I don't know. Like that's not consensual. So I want to remind people of that.
Mm-hmm. I actually love reading our names on the screen, Jumaque and Jimanika.
I mean, we're pretty magical. And we're
we're both
Geminis.
and we're both
There's
Geminis.
there's like
And
4 people on this call right now. Maybe more, depending on the day.
which means we need to have a follow-up conversation. But Jimanika, thank you so much for like, just this is a reunion for you and I, because we we first met just coming out of a similar space, and now we get to reunite in a space where we're both still figuring shit out, but at least we're being less apologetic about it, and also providing other spaces for other people to just be okay with the uncertainty, and
Mm,
also like come up with just like, I don't know if I want to say like come up with a plan, but at least provide spaces for people to dream about what else this can look like. And what better way to do that than in community, especially when so many of us may feel isolated. So thank
yeah.
you.
Yay.